Her last moments were caught on camera, heartbreaking footage. She held the phone tight. Her hand shook, but the screen stayed on. Outside, the street looked quiet. Carrie stood very close, his bathrobe slipping, his face red. Patricia said, "You really want this on video?" Her voice was small, but steady. He laughed like he didn't care. Then he said, "I'm mad enough to pull it." For a moment, neighbors' houses sat dark and still. Patricia raised the phone higher, pointing it at him so they could see. She wanted them to see. She wanted proof. She whispered, "Your neighbors are going to see you pointing a gun at me." Carrie did not move his eyes away from her. He stepped forward, slow. Patricia breathed in. The phone kept recording. Then Carrie said, "I'm ready to go." Patricia said, "No." She tried to put distance between them. The next second, a bright sound cut the night, and everything changed, but the screen did not lie. The phone kept rolling. The last thing recorded was her face, surprised and afraid. Then the picture on the phone trembled and went black. The video stopped. The question hung in the air. What happened next? Weeks before that night, life looked normal from the outside. Patricia and Carrie lived in a tidy little house on Rosedon Lane. They had a daughter, Olivia, who laughed and played and thought her parents were fine. Patricia worked hard. She had friends who loved her. To them, she seemed happy and smart. But inside the walls, there were many sharp words and heavy silences. Carrie drank too much. He said mean things about Patricia's weight and about people she cared for. Sometimes he would take a gun out of a cabinet and point it without meaning to shoot, and the house would freeze with fear. Patricia learned to keep track of his moods. She learned not to push too far when he was drinking. Patricia started to protect herself. She learned where to keep her phone so she could record when she felt scared. One morning, after a fight about money and words that cut too deep, she pressed record. Her voice captured every word. She told him she was scared for her and for Olivia. She told him she would not be threatened. Carrie shouted, and his words were loud and wild. At one point, Patricia said, "Go get your gun." Maybe she said it to prove she had witnesses. Maybe she said it because she wanted him to stop. The recording shows both of them, her trying to be brave, him getting angrier. The audio was a thin, honest witness to what happened in their house. Neighbors began to notice odd things. People saw Carrie walking in his bathrobe in the middle of the day, yelling at the air. They heard loud fights through the walls. Someone called once to check if everything was okay, and Carrie shouted nonsense back. Patricia told her friend she felt like she had to watch him. She told her sister she was exhausted. The little pile of bottle caps on the counter grew. Patricia kept her phone close. She wanted to have proof if she ever needed it. On the day everything went wrong, Patricia tried to leave the house. She wanted space. She stepped into their driveway with her phone recording. She wanted to show him that people could see him if he did something bad. She hoped that would stop him. He followed her onto the street. He called her stupid and tried to make her come back inside. She kept walking, filming him, trying to make him look foolish so neighbors would understand. Carrie's bathrobe fluttered, and he shouted things that made Patricia quicken her steps. She was breathing fast. Her legs felt heavy. She wanted to get to the car and drive away. At one point, Carrie seemed to calm down. He looked like he would go back inside. Patricia let herself relax a little. That moment of calm was the trick. Carrie stayed quiet, but he wowed. As planning. He stepped back toward the house and opened a cabinet in the kitchen. Patricia did not know he was getting the shotgun. She thought he had left. She walked back a little closer to the front door just to be sure the argument was over. She filmed him as he walked up and down the street. She said, "Your neighbors are going to see you pointing a gun at me." She wanted them to know. She still believed the world outside their fence would help her. The house smelled like coffee and old wood. The sun was soft that day, but the air was cold with fear. Inside, a shotgun leaned where someone could reach it easily. Carrie grabbed it and checked it as if to make sure it would work. Patricia did not see him at first. She stepped outside, phone in hand, and smiled weakly at the passerby who waved. She thought the worst was over. She did not know how close danger had come. Suddenly, Carrie moved faster than Patricia expected. He came out of the house and walked toward her with the gun. Patricia's breath stopped. She tried to back away. She shouted for him to stop. The phone's camera kept rolling. She kept speaking to the phone like it was a shield. She said, "Grab your phone." She said, "No, not." The next moments were a rush of loud noises, shouts, and then a sharp sound. The camera wobbled as someone fell. The street filled with sirens, and neighbors' lights flicked on. People ran out of their homes to see what had happened. Patricia lay on the ground with the phone beside her. Blood was there. A neighbor called 911 and said, "We heard 3 pops." The neighbor saw a woman on her back and a man in a bathrobe standing near her. He seemed drunk and calm, like he had done nothing wrong. He kept asking for a drink. The police arrived quickly, and they found shotgun shells near the car in the driveway. Patricia's phone was in the garage, stained. For a while, the officers thought maybe it had been a terrible accident. Then they watched the recordings. The video on Patricia's phone showed the last minutes of her life. The audio had her telling him not to touch her. It had him saying, "Go get your gun." The tape made clear how scared she was. It made clear how quiet he became before the shots. The officers felt the chill of seeing something they could not change. As they watched, a new thought grew. This was not an accident. It looked planned. The chapter ends with detectives walking through the kitchen where the shotgun sat. They saw more guns in the house. They found Patricia's phone under water bottles in the garage. It had her voice and her last video. The detectives watched the clip, and one of them said softly, "She recorded the last 30 minutes." Outside, the street smelled of burnt metal, and neighbors stood in the cold night. In the kitchen, a corner light hummed. The detectives felt that the pieces were coming together. Then, as they began to step back outside to talk to Carrie, he said something that made every heart in the room drop. He smiled and said, "It wasn't good, man." Carrie's voice was low when he spoke. "It wasn't good, man." The detective froze for a second. The night air outside felt sharper than before, like the whole street was holding its breath. Blue and red lights from the patrol cars washed over the house, making shadows stretch across the walls. The phone Patricia had been recording with lay inside a clear evidence bag on the hood of a police cruiser. Detective Harris stared at Carrie. He was barefoot, swaying a little, his bathrobe still loose. He didn't look scared. He looked like someone who didn't care what happened next. That was the first real sign this wasn't just a crime of passion. It was something colder. The officers guided Carrie toward the car. His eyes were unfocused, but his mouth kept moving. "I just want another drink," he muttered. He didn't look at Patricia lying on the driveway. He didn't ask where she was. He didn't even turn his head. That silence made the air feel heavier. Neighbors huddled at the edge of the yellow tape, whispering, their faces pale in the streetlights. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and went quiet again. Detectives stepped into the house slowly. The kitchen smelled of old alcohol, coffee, and gunpowder. On the floor, an empty bottle rolled slightly with each step they took. In the corner, the shotgun leaned against the wall like it had always been part of the room. One detective picked it up with gloves, careful not to smudge any prints. On the counter sat another bottle, half full. It looked like someone had been drinking here minutes before everything happened. They moved through the house. The living room light was still on, shining dim and bluish. A family photo of Patricia, Carrie, and Olivia sat on a small table. Everyone in that picture was smiling. It didn't match the house they were standing in now. A second detective whispered, "He planned this. I can feel it all." Detective Harris didn't answer. His eyes were on the photo. In Olivia's room, there were pink curtains, a pile of toys, and a drawing taped to the wall that said Mommy and Daddy, with stick figures holding hands. It was a small, quiet room, the kind that should feel safe, but now it was part of a crime scene. Officers walked softly, their radios clicking quietly in the background. Every step felt like walking through someone else's secrets. As they searched, they found something that made them stop. Several old voicemail recordings on Patricia's phone. They were messages she had saved not just from today, but from months earlier. In one, Carrie's voice was thick and slurred. "You think you can just walk out?" he had said. In another, he'd shouted about her friends. The last message was almost calm, but the calm was worse than shouting. "If you leave," he said, "I'll make sure no one forgets it." Detectives exchanged a look. This was bigger than a bad fight. Patricia had been afraid for a long time. While investigators worked inside, outside was a different kind of quiet. Olivia wasn't home that night. She was staying with Patricia's sister in another part of town. But neighbors were beginning to talk. A woman wrapped in a shawl told an officer, "I saw her walking down the street earlier with her phone up. She looked scared. He was following her. I should have called sooner." The woman's eyes were glassy with guilt. A man nearby added, "We heard him yelling last week too. We thought it was just another argument." The detective stepped back outside. The night had grown colder. Patricia's phone was already on its way to the lab. They had audio and video from her. They had witness statements, but one thing was still missing. Why tonight? Why this moment? Detective Harris knelt near the car tires. Two of them were flat, clean, round holes, like someone had aimed artfully. It wasn't random. Carrie had been drunk, but he hadn't missed. That told them he knew exactly what he was doing. He'd shot her, then made sure she couldn't escape. Meanwhile, Carrie sat in the back seat of the patrol car with his hands cuffed. His head leaned back against the seat. He whispered something no one could hear. An officer opened the door and asked where the weapon was. Carrie shrugged. "I don't know," he said softly. His eyes were distant. It was like he was already somewhere else. Hours later, at the sheriff's station, detectives placed the evidence bag on the metal table. They connected Patricia's phone to a monitor. A blue glow filled the room. The footage played again, the same trembling image of a woman holding her phone, trying to protect herself with a camera. Harris leaned closer to the screen. This wasn't just evidence. It was a warning. Patricia's voice echoed through the speaker. "Your neighbors are going to see you pointing a gun at me." Her breath was shaky but steady. Then Carrie's voice came low, calm, dangerous. "I'm ready to go." The room went silent. Even seasoned detectives felt the chill of those words. One officer muttered, "He wanted her to hear it. He wanted everyone to hear it." Detective Harris pushed the chair back. "Get me everything on their history, police calls, complaints, anything," he said. A junior officer nodded and ran out. Harris stared at the screen one more time. Patricia had done everything she could to show the world what was happening. Just before sunrise, they received a call from the lab. They'd found fingerprints on the shotgun. All of them belonged to Carrie. As they logged the evidence, the hallway outside filled with quiet footsteps. Olivia had arrived with her aunt. She was still in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared at the glass window that separated her from the adults. She didn't yet know her mother was gone. And then, just as the detectives thought the worst part of the night was over, an officer rushed in. From the evidence room. "Detective," he said, breathing fast, "you need to see this. There's another recording. It's longer." The words hung heavy in the air. Another recording. Another truth Patricia left behind. The story wasn't done yet, not even close.